Big Joe Egan, a former Irish heavyweight boxing champion and sparring partner of Iron Mike Tyson, ran a popular pub in the city. Described by Tyson as the toughest white man on the planet, Egan was, in his prime, a fighting machine. Despite his physical presence and fighting capabilities, Egan is regarded by all those that know him as the personification of good manners. There are those, of course, who take such a trait as a sign of weakness.
Well, raised in Dublin, I'm the eldest of 7 children. My daddy came to work in England when we were children. I got bullied in the UK because I had the Irish accent. And when I picked up the English accent, when I went home to Dublin, I got bullied in Dublin. When I went home to Ireland to eventually settle and live in Ireland, because we were coming backwards and forwards, I started boxing. First and foremost, I suppose, to learn to protect myself. And boxing doesn't just give you self-respect, it gives you respect for another person. I boxed for Ireland on a number of occasions. I boxed all over the world. I shared the ring with a lot of world champions. Every boxer that climbs into the ring dreams about becoming a champion of the world. I wasn't good enough to become a champion of the world, but it was a great honour to share the ring with champions of the world. I went over to America. I boxed in America when I was 17. Anyway, I stayed on. I went to Gleason's gym. I sparred a couple of professional heavyweights in Gleason's gym, gave a good account of myself. There was 2 professional trainers in the gym, Bob Jackson and Al Gavin, and they'd actually bought a gym off Cus D'Amato. So they knew Cus, and they knew the young heavyweight that Cus was training called Mike Tyson. I'd never heard of Mike. I'd come over from Ireland. Mike was knocking men out as a boy, but I didn't know this. Stupid Paddy came over from Ireland, didn't know who Mike was. I just heard that there was this teenager, same age as myself, well actually 6 months younger than me, who needed a sparring partner. And I'd been so used to fighting older men. When I got the opportunity to go and spar with a younger man than me, I dived on the opportunity. I ended up staying on with Mike for nearly 2 years, sparring Tyson. And I'm very proud to say that he never put me down in them nearly 2 years. I fought Lennox Lewis, had a great fight with Lennox as well. But boxing, there's a big psychological warfare in boxing. And I really believed, because Tyson couldn't put me down, that Lennox couldn't put me down. And I stayed on my feet with Lennox Lewis. So I'm very proud to say that I stayed on my feet with 2 of the best punchers of my era. But when my boxing career finished first time round, I emigrated. I came back over to the UK and I settled in Birmingham. I'd boxed in Birmingham as an amateur on 3 occasions, the Ladywood Boxing Club, the Birmingham City Boxing Club, and the Whalley Boxing Club. The Whalley Boxing Club, they hosted the show in the Irish Centre in Digbeth. And when I came back to Birmingham, I ended up managing the Dubliner pub in Digbeth for Paddy Finn. He said, Joe, my career was cut short because of a spine. He had a problem with his spine. And he said, I went into the pub trade, and he said, your career's cut short because of a car crash. He said, come on over and work for me. And I did. I came over and I settled in Birmingham, and been in the UK now this time round, nearly 20 years now. I came over in 95, managed the Dubliner pub for 2 years, and then the opportunity came up to take over a pub called the Lyndhurst. And me and my ex-business partner, Thomas McGill, who was a former ex-Irish boxing champion as well, we took over the Lyndhurst pub. When we took over the pub in 97, the Lyndhurst. There was racketeers, bully boys. I had experienced bully boys most of my life. From a child, like I said, I got bullied in Manchester, and then when I went home to Ireland, I got bullied in Ireland. And I've experienced, nobody likes a bully. Nobody likes a bully, and people think it just happens to children, it happens to adults as well. And in 97, we took over the pub, and then had 7 or 8 months of the pub going really well. And then in July, the 19th of July 98, we had the racketeers demand protection money. I thought this was something you'd see in the movies. I really didn't think this was happening to me and my business partner. And it wasn't an imagination. It wasn't a nightmare. It was actually happening. And being a licensee for a pub, I cooperated with the police. I informed the police of what's going on. I didn't want to be a vigilante. I'm a licensee for a pub. I let the police take care of this. The following week, the 26th of July 1998, the gangs gathered and then they attacked the pub. The police, unfortunately, let me down. The gang were able to get onto the car park of my pub. We had a function going on that day. We had a Holy Communion in our function room, and the pub was frequented by a lot of proper people, ex-boxers, good people. And I was blessed that day that there was people in my pub, because if I'd have been there on my own, they'd have killed me, the gang that attacked. All right, I might have took one or two of them with me, but what good is that? I was blessed on that day. There was people beside me to be able to make a stance. You know, and the law, the statute law in this country says you're able to make a stance. I made a stance because I'd been let down by the police. I took a gunshot wound for my troubles. I got hit with shotgun pellets. They had guns, hatchets, machetes. It was a very violent day, and it was a tragic day, to tell you the truth. There was a few people, customers and friends from my pub, that were badly wounded, and it was quite horrific.
How many people were there?
37 of them attacked. 37 attacked my pub, and it was quite horrific. You know, I don't claim to be any type of tough guy, but I've had a hard upbringing, you know, and I've grown up tough. And that particular day, you know, they show programs on the television about a band of brothers. There was a band of brothers there that day, and men that stood beside me, and women. There was a couple of women as well. Half an hour before they attacked my pub, I phoned the police. I phoned a sergeant who's a good man, a proper man. And he said, "I'm on my way to you, Joe." And as he was on his way to me, he got radioed to a Mickey Mouse alarm call. Mine was a genuine distress call. And unfortunately, he never got to me, and the police never got to me for 55 minutes. There was a 30-minute warning and a 25-minute pitch battle, 55 minutes before the first policeman arrived. And the police station are 400 yards from the pub. And from that day on, in Birmingham, my life sort of spiraled out of control. I got into a bit of trouble afterwards, trying to make ends meet, to tell you the truth, Bernard. The pub was never the same again. It went downhill. I tried my level best to keep it going as best I could. I did, but it wasn't making any money. And eventually, the brewery that we had a pub with, we had a lease with the brewery. They put me out of the pub because they said I wasn't a proper landlord. I wasn't a proper person. Even though it was me, I was the victim. And my life spiraled out of control. My ex-missus, my ex-fiancée, she cleared off with Michael Flatley, the Riverdance guy, was all over the world's news. She deserted, as far as she was concerned, a sinking ship. And that didn't help me at the time. I took very sick as well, and I ended up in prison. I remember being in court and getting found guilty of a crime. And I looked up to the gallery, and my dad was in the gallery. And I watched him. Hold his head in his hands and cry. Excuse me. I feel sick even talking about it.
I know. But whatever you go through, Joe, it makes you what you are, doesn't it? You know.
Me getting sent to prison, Bernard, had the same effect as my dad's dad dying.
Of course, yeah.
It made him cry, and I feel sick and ashamed. And when I came out of prison, I didn't know what to do with my life, you know, and I made a comeback into boxing. And it was headlines in the paper, Joe the Boxer was better than saying Joe the Convict or Joe the Ex-Convict. And I still feel sick even talking about that, Bernard, like, you know.
Like Joe, I grew up in the Midlands as part of an Irish family, and we were subjected to the very same prejudice those within the black community endured. I was a teenager at the time of the Birmingham pub bombings, and I can vividly recall the huge swell of anti-Irish feeling that engulfed the city. My father was beaten up at his place of work, and shops refused to serve my mother simply because she had an Irish accent.
Well, I'm Irish, and I'm proud to be Irish. I'm not very proud of some of the Irish history, you know. And like the UK has been kind to a lot of foreign nationals, and it's welcomed the Irish. Already the Irish have come over and they've worked in the UK. Like I said earlier on in the interview, Ireland's greatest export has always been its people. It was just unfortunate that the troubles in Northern Ireland, that a particular element of the Irish have had a war with the English, and the Birmingham bombings in particular was sad. No, soldiers are different. You know, ours is not the question why, ours is but to do or die is a soldier's motto. A soldier joins the army and there's conflict. A soldier is expected to go out and fight in a war. Civilians going out on a Friday night to a pub don't expect to be blown up. And it was a sad, tragic day for the Irish as well. It was a tragic day for the world.
I never really understood the conflict in Ireland. My father had told me to hate the English, and so I did. I don't suppose those people who erected signs saying no Irish, no blacks and no dogs fully understood their reasons for hating strangers either. English against Irish, Burger Bar member against Johnson crew member, Catholics against Protestants, villains against the police. All conflicts are pointless, because the only thing we ever learn is that hate breeds hatred, and hatred will destroy us all.